Years ago, in the quiet hum of space, Jin Soo never imagined that his life would be changed forever. He was just a young engineer working on an asteroid mining station in a distant corner of the galaxy. The company he worked for, mining precious minerals from asteroids, had one simple goal: make money. But that was before the accident. Jin Soo had been standing in the control room, checking the scanners, when everything went wrong. A sudden explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared, the lights flickered, and the walls trembled. He barely had time to react as the massive asteroid fragment struck the mining platform. The station's outer shell cracked, and the cold emptiness of space began to creep in. He could hear nothing but the deafening silence as his fellow workers scrambled for escape. But Jin Soo wasn't quick enough. A blast from a ruptured gas line sent him flying across the room. His body slammed against a metal pillar, and everything went black. He should have died there. The station was a wreck, and the crew's chances of survival were slim. The only thing keeping Jin Soo alive was the cold, steady hand of fate, or perhaps something more. As he slowly regained consciousness, Jin Soo found himself staring up at a sky full of stars. The station's lights were gone, and the space station, now in pieces, drifted away behind him. His body was bruised, battered, and bleeding, but there was something else, a strange sensation. It was as if someone had been watching over him. He tried to move, but a pain shot through his side. That was when he saw her. A woman, tall, graceful, and standing above him, with a presence that seemed otherworldly. Her skin shimmered faintly, almost like it was made of stardust. She was unlike anyone Jin Soo had ever seen. An alien, of course, but what caught his attention were her eyes. They were deep, glowing a soft blue, full of understanding and calm. They were eyes that could see through him, and yet there was no fear in them, only compassion. "Are you real?" Jin Soo asked, his voice weak. She knelt beside him, her movements swift and smooth, like she was made for this moment. The woman, with her strange beauty and mysterious energy, didn't answer with words. Instead, she placed a hand on his chest. A soft, warm light radiated from her palm, healing his wounds. The pain slowly faded, and his vision cleared. "Rest," she whispered, though her voice sounded almost like it was coming from both inside his mind and from the air around him. Jin Soo felt his eyelids grow heavy, and he couldn't resist the urge to sleep. The next time he woke, he was lying on a bed in a small, unfamiliar room. The air smelled fresh, clean, not like the recycled air on the station. He looked around. The walls were made of something smooth and metallic, yet somehow organic, pulsing with a faint glow. He sat up, his body surprisingly free of pain. His mind raced, trying to remember what had happened. Had it been a dream? But when he reached for his side, he felt the slight hum of the healing device still inside him. "You're awake," said a calm voice. He turned to find the alien woman standing at the doorway, watching him. She was holding something that looked like a communication device, but it wasn't anything he recognized. "Who? What are you?" Jin Soo stammered, still in shock. "I am Aria," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I saved your life." Jin Soo struggled to comprehend. "You're an alien." She nodded. "I am of the Kylor, a race of explorers who travel the stars." Jin Soo felt his heart race. "But why? Why save me? I'm just an engineer. What's so special about me?" Aria didn't immediately respond. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes studying him with a kind of intensity that felt both unnerving and comforting. "The truth is, I didn't save you because of who you are. I saved you because of what you could become," she said. Jin Soo stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Humanity," she began, her gaze never leaving his, "is at a crossroads. I saw something in you, in your potential, something that could change the future of your people. But I couldn't let you die. Not yet. Not when you're needed. Jin Su shook his head, trying to make sense of her words. I don't understand. I'm just one person. Arya smiled. A gentle, understanding smile. You don't need to understand now. But soon, you will. The galaxy is full of dangers, ones that humanity hasn't yet encountered. The choices you make, the path you take, will be vital for the survival of your species. Jin Su's mind was reeling. Was she serious? What could a single person do to change the fate of an entire species? Before he could speak again, Arya stood up, her eyes looking toward the sky through the window. The time will come when you will need to make that decision. But for now, I have to leave. Earth is calling me. Earth? Jin Su whispered, not understanding. Yes, Arya replied. I will return to your planet, and when I do, I will need you. I will need you to understand the importance of your role in what's to come. And with that, she was gone, leaving only the soft glow of the stars and the strange feeling that she would indeed return for him one day. Months passed, and the memory of Arya seemed like a distant dream to Jin Su. He had returned to Earth, resuming his life as a low-profile engineer. The quiet rhythm of his everyday life, filled with work, meetings, and moments of solitude, seemed far removed from the strange, life-altering experience he had in space. But one evening, while sitting on his apartment balcony, Jin Su looked up at the stars. The calm of the night was broken by a strange flicker of light. At first, he thought it was a passing satellite, but then the flicker grew brighter and brighter, drawing his gaze. The sky seemed to crack open, and what he saw sent a chill through his spine. A ship. A massive, shimmering vessel, unlike anything he had ever seen, was descending into Earth's atmosphere. It was enormous, radiating a soft blue light that spread across the sky like an aurora. It wasn't just any spaceship. It was the same one Arya had been in when she saved him. Jin Su's heart raced. He knew, without a doubt, that she had returned. The ship touched down on the outskirts of the city, just beyond the forest. The moment it landed, the world's governments scrambled. News reports flashed across screens, announcing the arrival of an unidentified extraterrestrial vessel. Earth's military was quickly mobilized, but despite their efforts, they couldn't get a clear shot of the alien ship. The craft was too advanced, too well hidden. Jin Su stood there on his balcony, staring at the ship through the glass window, his thoughts swirling in confusion. He had to know. He had to see her again. Ignoring the risks, he grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door, making his way toward the forest where the ship had landed. His heart was pounding in his chest as he ran, not entirely sure what to expect, but feeling an overwhelming pull in his chest. The air was thick with anticipation, and the lights of the distant ship grew brighter as he neared. When Jin Su finally reached the edge of the forest, he paused. The ship stood before him, silent and still, its metallic surface glinting under the moonlight. The air around it hummed with energy. He hesitated, wondering if this was the right decision, but he couldn't turn back now. A soft sound broke the silence, and Jin Su's breath caught in his throat. A figure stepped out from the ship's entrance, a figure he would never forget. Arya. Her appearance hadn't changed, but something about her seemed different now. She no longer had the same mysterious aura that had surrounded her during their first meeting. Instead, she looked tired, worn by something deeper than just the journey. Jin Su, she said, her voice warm yet tinged with urgency. You came. He nodded, barely able to speak. I saw the ship. I knew it was you. Arya smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. I had to come. The situation has changed. The galaxy is not as peaceful as it seems. Jin Su swallowed hard. What do you mean? What's happening? Her expression grew serious. I have been sent here on a mission to warn Earth. There are forces in the galaxy that see your world as a threat. They want to take it from you. Jin Su frowned. A threat? We're just a small, developing planet. Why would anyone care? Because you're not just a small planet, Aria explained. Humanity is on the verge of something extraordinary. Something that could change the balance of power across the entire galaxy. Your people are capable of more than you realize. Jin Su felt a rush of confusion. I don't understand. What do you mean? Before Aria could answer, there was a sudden rustling from the trees. Jin Su tensed, his heart racing. Aria turned swiftly, her eyes narrowing. You must leave. Now, she said urgently, her voice laced with warning. Before Jin Su could react, shadowy figures emerged from the trees. There were men, dressed in military uniforms, but they didn't seem to be from Earth. Their faces were cold, and their weapons were aimed directly at Aria. Step away from the alien, one of them ordered. Jin Su took a step forward, his heart pounding. What's going on? Who are you? The leader of the soldiers looked at him with disdain. We are the Earth Defense Coalition. And you, Jin Su, are a threat to Earth's safety. We cannot allow you to associate with this alien. Aria didn't move. She stood tall, her gaze fixed on the soldiers. You are mistaken. I have come to protect Earth, not harm it. The soldiers didn't listen. The leader signaled for them to move in. Aria's hand shot out in a blur of motion, and before Jin Su could even blink, the soldiers were on the ground, incapacitated by some unseen force. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. Aria didn't even raise a finger. You should leave, she said to Jin Su, her voice soft but firm. The people who sent them will be watching. We can't stay here much longer. Jin Su stood frozen, his mind racing. What are they? Why are they hunting you? They are part of a larger organization, an organization that believes humanity is too dangerous to be left unchecked, she explained. They fear what you will become, and they want to stop it before it's too late. Jin Su felt a rush of emotions, fear, confusion, anger. How could anyone see humanity as a threat? They had barely even reached the stars. We need to leave now, Aria urged, pulling him gently away from the fallen soldiers. As they hurried toward her ship, Jin Su couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger was at play. His entire world was about to change, and he had no idea how deep the dangers ran, or what role he would have to play in all of this. The silence inside the ship was heavy, the air thick with the unspoken tension between Jin Su and Aria. As the ship soared away from the forest, away from Earth's atmosphere, Jin Su found himself looking out at the stars, trying to wrap his mind around everything he had just learned. What is happening, Aria? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Aria sat across from him, her gaze focused on the control panel in front of her, but her mind seemed far away, lost in thought. The soft hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the room. Her eyes flicked toward him, and for a moment, there was a flicker of regret in her gaze. The truth is far more dangerous than you can imagine, Jin Su, she said, her voice low but filled with urgency. The forces I warned you about. They are not just some rogue faction. They are part of a much larger conspiracy, one that threatens not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. Jin Su felt his heart race. What do you mean? Who are they? They call themselves the Ascendants, Aria replied, her tone steady but filled with underlying anger. They are a group of powerful beings from different species, united under one belief, that humanity is a threat to the balance of the galaxy. They believe that your species, with your ambition and rapid progress, will one day surpass all others. And they fear that. Jin Su frowned. Why would they fear us? We're just human. We're not even close to mastering the stars. Aria's eyes darkened. You don't understand, Jin Su. You see, humanity is different from every other species in the galaxy. You have a unique potential, a potential for growth, for innovation, for change that no one has ever seen before. It's something the Ascendants can't control, and that's why they want to destroy you before you can reach your full potential. Jin Su's mind raced. But how? How can they stop us? Aria took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts. The Ascendants have infiltrated Earth in ways you can't imagine. They've been manipulating events from the shadows for years. They control parts of your governments, your military, and even your corporations. They've been slowly shaping humanity's future, pushing you in certain directions to make you weaker. They've been preparing for the day when you might challenge their power. Jin Su shook his head, trying to grasp the gravity of her words. That sounds impossible. How could they hide all of this from the rest of the world? They've been doing it for centuries, Aria explained. The Ascendants are patient, Jin Su. They operate in the background, making sure no one notices their influence. They don't need to reveal themselves to control you. They've already planted seeds of fear, mistrust, and division among your people. It's all part of their plan. Jin Su's head was spinning. But why come to me? Why tell me all of this? Aria's eyes softened. Because I believe in humanity. I believe that you, your species, can overcome this. I've watched you. I've seen what you're capable of. But you need to understand the truth before it's too late. Jin Su leaned forward, his mind racing with questions. What do we do now? How can we stop them? Aria hesitated. That's the difficult part. The Ascendants are powerful, and they have many resources at their disposal. But I have a plan. I need your help, Jin Su. You have a unique set of skills, a way of thinking that could be the key to stopping them. Jin Su blinked, taken aback. What kind of plan? Aria leaned in, her voice growing more serious. We need to take down their network, piece by piece. We need to expose them for who they truly are and cut off their influence on Earth. But it won't be easy. They'll do everything they can to stop us, and they'll use anyone they can as pawns. Jin Su felt a knot form in his stomach. But I'm just one man. How can I fight against them? Aria's gaze locked onto his, her expression resolute. You won't be alone, Jin Su. I'll be with you. And there are others. People like you. People who are starting to wake up to the truth. You don't need to do this alone. Jin Su nodded, though doubt still lingered in his mind. He had no experience with this kind of fight. He was just an engineer, a man who had spent his life focused on machines, not conspiracies and galactic politics. But something about Aria's words stirred a sense of purpose within him, something deep inside that he couldn't ignore. So what's the first step? He asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in his head. Aria's lips curled into a faint smile. The first step is to get to the heart of the Ascendants' operations. We need to find their base of operations, the one place where they are pulling the strings. Once we have that, we can strike back. Jin Su took a deep breath, his nerves calming slightly. And how do we find this base? That's where you come in, Aria said, her voice filled with confidence. I've been tracking their movements for years, but they've been careful. They hide their traces well. But your skills, your knowledge of technology and systems, could give us the edge we need. You'll have to dig deep into Earth's systems, uncover hidden codes, and find the patterns they've left behind. Jin Su nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling on him. This wasn't the life he had ever imagined. But somehow, he felt that this was where he was meant to be. If humanity was truly at risk, then it was up to him, and Aria, to stop it. Aria placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch reassuring. We're in this together, Jin Su, and we'll make sure humanity survives. Jin Su looked out the window, the stars now far below them. He didn't know how this would end, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever was coming. The fight had just begun. The next few days were a blur for Jin Su. After Aria's revelation, everything in his life had changed. The quiet, predictable life he once knew now felt distant, replaced by a growing urgency. They had to stop the Ascendants, and Jin Su was beginning to realize just how much was at stake. He sat in front of a computer screen in the ship's small but efficient data hub. Aria had been working tirelessly, scanning for any trace of the Ascendant's activities, but it was slow work. She could not access the systems on Earth directly. Her ship's technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed, but it was also cautious, always staying one step away from detection. So it was up to Jin-Soo to use his skills to find the patterns that the Ascendants had hidden deep in Earth's networks. "I found something," Jin-Soo muttered to himself, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He was combing through layers of data, corporate files, government communications, military reports, searching for anything out of the ordinary. Aria stood behind him, her calm presence almost a contrast to the tension Jin-Soo felt. She watched him work, her keen eyes flickering over the screen as he navigated through encrypted files. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice steady, but there was an underlying anticipation. Jin-Soo paused, leaning back in his chair. "This is strange. I've been tracing a few high-level government contracts for weeks. Some of them have no clear purpose, and there's a strange pattern to them. These contracts don't seem to match up with what they're supposed to be doing. There's a connection between them, hidden in the codes, like they're being funneled to a single destination." Aria nodded, her face hardening. "That's exactly what we're looking for. The Ascendants have been embedding themselves in Earth's infrastructure for years. These contracts could be their way of setting up operations." "You're on the right track." Jin-Soo's fingers moved quickly, analyzing the code. "I think I found the place. It's a facility in the Arctic, heavily guarded, with a lot of mysterious government and private sector involvement." "Do you have access to its location?" Aria asked. Jin-Soo nodded, tapping a few more keys. A map of the world appeared on the screen, with a pinpoint on the icy wilderness of the Arctic. It was a place that was practically off the grid, a location buried under layers of secrecy. "This could be it," he said, his voice filled with both excitement and fear. "The Ascendant's base of operations." Aria moved closer, her eyes scanning the map. "This is good. But we need more than just a location. We need to know how they're operating there, what they're hiding." "I can get us inside," Jin-Soo said, determination creeping into his voice. "I'll use my contacts. I know some people who work in the highest levels of Earth's military and private sectors. They might have access to that facility, or at least know what's happening inside." Aria gave him a long, thoughtful look. "Are you sure you want to do this? It won't be easy. There's a lot of danger involved. If the Ascendants are using this facility, it will be well guarded. You may not be able to trust anyone you talk to." Jin-Soo didn't hesitate. "I've been living in the shadows of the world for too long. If I'm going to do something that matters, now is the time." Aria smiled, a rare expression of approval crossing her face. "I'll be with you every step of the way, Jin-Soo. But remember, we can't afford to make mistakes. We must be careful." The next day, Jin-Soo contacted an old friend, a former military officer named Minho, who now worked as a private contractor for high-level government security. Jin-Soo had helped him with some technical projects in the past, and though they hadn't spoken in years, he trusted Minho enough to ask for help. Minho was surprised to hear from him, but agreed to meet at a quiet cafe in the city. When Jin-Soo arrived, he found Minho waiting, looking out the window with a wary expression. "You've been quiet for a while, Jin-Soo," Minho said as they shook hands. "What's going on? You don't just reach out to me unless it's serious." Jin-Soo sat down and lowered his voice. "I need your help, Minho. There's a facility in the Arctic. It's tied to some shady government contracts and some private companies. I need to know what's going on there." Minho raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "The Arctic? That's a tough one. Man, you're talking about a black site facility, right? Something off the grid. If they're involved, the Ascendants probably are." Jin-Soo felt a chill run down his spine. "You know about them." Minho leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "I know enough. You're not the first person to ask questions about that facility. But there are people watching it closely. People with a lot of power. You'll need more than just my help to get inside." Jin Soo clenched his fists, frustration rising. "Then what can we do?" Minho thought for a moment. "You can't just walk in. But if we get the right tools and the right team, we can hack into the systems controlling the security. It'll be risky, but it's possible." Jin Soo nodded, his resolve hardening. "I'm in. We do whatever it takes." Minho smiled, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "I knew you'd say that. But remember, Jin Soo, this isn't just about hacking the system. If the Ascendants are really involved, it's going to get dangerous. You'll be up against far more than just human opposition." "I'm ready," Jin Soo said, his voice steady. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew he couldn't back up now. As they finished their conversation, Jin Soo felt a strange calm settle over him. He was about to enter the heart of darkness, and he didn't know what he would find. But one thing was certain: he would do whatever it took to protect humanity. He wasn't just an engineer anymore. He was a part of something much bigger. Jin Soo and Minho worked quickly over the next few days, making preparations for their dangerous mission. They gathered a small team of hackers and technicians who could help them break into the Arctic facility's security systems. Minho had his connections, people who owed him favors or had the skills to get things done when the situation was urgent. The team met in a dimly lit room at an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The atmosphere was tense, everyone aware of the risks they were about to take. They were not just up against regular security. If Area's warnings were true, they would be up against the Ascendants, a shadowy and powerful force, with far more resources than anyone on Earth could imagine. Jin Soo sat at the head of the table, the weight of the task ahead settling heavily on his shoulders. Minho was beside him, scanning through the blueprints of the facility they had uncovered. "Okay," Minho said, tapping his finger on the screen. "This is it. The facility is deep in the Arctic, isolated, and heavily guarded. There are only a few ways in, and all of them are heavily monitored. The Ascendants have set up multiple layers of security, both digital and physical." Jin Soo leaned forward, studying the map. "We can't just walk in. What about the surrounding area? Any weak spots we can exploit?" "There's an old satellite relay station about 5 kilometers from the main base," Minho explained. "It's been abandoned for years, but it still has a few active security feeds. If we can get to that station, we can tap into the main facility's communications network and create a backdoor for us to slip in." Jin Soo nodded. "And how do we get there without being detected?" Minho smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Leave that to me. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. We'll be able to move in undetected, but it'll take precise timing." The rest of the team began to gather around, each member bringing their own expertise. There was Soo Jin, a brilliant hacker who could break into almost any system, and Ha Jin, a former military operative who knew how to handle weapons and combat tactics. They all had their roles to play, and Jin Soo had no doubt that each one of them would be crucial to the mission's success. "We leave tonight," Minho said. "Get ready. It's going to be a long ride." The flight to the Arctic was cold and uncomfortable, the kind of journey that left you with an unsettling feeling in your gut. The small private jet they had secured was the only way to make it to the remote location undetected. The air grew thinner as they neared the frozen landscape, and the landscape outside the window was nothing but endless white. Snow, ice, and more snow. Jin Soo sat by the window, lost in his thoughts. He couldn't help but think about Aria, about the danger she had warned him about. The Ascendants were more than just a threat. They were a force that had been manipulating humanity from the shadows for years. But how far had their influence spread? How many people on Earth were unknowingly working for them? His thoughts were interrupted when Minho spoke. "We'll be landing soon. Soo Jin, start preparing the hacking gear. Ha Jin, you're on lookout. Make sure we don't run into any unexpected surprises." Everyone nodded, moving with the quiet efficiency of people who had been in dangerous situations before. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was no turning back now. They had come too far, and the stakes were too high. As the jet touched down on a remote ice landing strip, the cold hit them like a slap in the face. The Arctic wind howled around them, the chill so intense it seemed to cut through their clothing. Jin-Soo zipped up his jacket and stepped out onto the snow, the crunch of his boots the only sound in the desolate landscape. The others followed quickly, their breath visible in the freezing air. Minho pointed toward a distant ridge. "That's where the satellite station is. We need to move fast, so stay close." They began walking toward the ridge, the landscape stretching endlessly around them. The wind howled, biting at their skin, and the snow underfoot was deep, making every step more difficult than the last. It felt as if they were walking through a forgotten world, cut off from everything they knew. The isolation of the place was overwhelming, and the feeling that they were being watched lingered in the air. Jin-Soo glanced over at Hae-jin, who was scanning the horizon through a pair of binoculars. "Any signs of movement?" Hae-jin shook her head. "Nothing yet, but we can't let our guard down. The Ascendants have eyes everywhere." They continued on, their progress slow but steady. The cold was unbearable, but Jin-Soo kept his focus, determined to see this through. The closer they got to the satellite station, the more he felt the weight of what they were about to do. They were about to infiltrate one of the most secretive and dangerous places on Earth, and they had no idea what they would find inside. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the station. The building was old, its walls weathered by the harsh conditions of the Arctic, but it still stood strong. Minho led the way, carefully approaching the entrance. "Soo-jin, you're up," Minho said. Soo-jin nodded and quickly set up her laptop, plugging into the station's power grid. Within seconds, she was accessing the security system. "Okay, I'm in," Soo-jin said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I've unlocked the main doors. We've got about 5 minutes before the security system resets." Minho motioned for everyone to move quickly. They entered the station, the air inside much warmer than outside, but still cold enough to remind them of the harsh conditions beyond. As they moved through the dark corridors of the station, Jin-Soo's heart raced. They were getting closer to the heart of the Ascendant's operation. Every step felt like they were walking deeper into a web of lies and danger. "We're almost there," Minho whispered. "Stay sharp." Jin-Soo nodded, gripping his equipment tighter. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. But as they moved deeper into the station, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. The atmosphere inside the satellite station grew increasingly tense as Jin-Soo and his team moved deeper into the building. The air was stale, filled with the smell of old metal and machinery. The walls, once white, were now tarnished by years of neglect. Despite the station's deteriorating condition, it still held an eerie sense of purpose. It was as if this place had been forgotten by the world, yet it was still a crucial piece of something much larger. They moved quietly, following Minho's lead as he navigated the dimly lit hallways. Hae-jin, the former military operative, kept her eyes scanning the corridors, her sharp senses always on alert. Soo-jin was next, her focus on her laptop as she worked to keep their access to the facility's systems open. Jin-Soo brought up the rear, his mind racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was it. They were about to uncover the truth, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what they might find. As they reached a narrow corridor, Minho signaled for them to stop. He motioned for Soo-jin to check her screen. "We're close," he whispered. Soo-jin nodded and tapped a few keys, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. "I'm in. There's a secure terminal up ahead. We can get into the central system from there." Minho turned to Jin-Soo. "This is where you come in. You'll need to plug in directly to the terminal. Soo-jin will guide you through the process. But we have to be quick. The Ascendants have eyes everywhere. Jin-Soo nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The risks were enormous, but they had no other choice. They continued forward, moving as quietly as possible. The terminal was located in a small room at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. As they entered, Jin-Soo felt a sudden chill, not from the cold but from the sense that they were being watched. The room was empty, save for a single computer terminal in the center, its screen dark and waiting. Soo-Jin quickly set up her equipment, connecting her laptop to the terminal. "I've bypassed the initial security layers," she said, her fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard. "Give me a moment to crack the encryption." Jin-Soo stood by, his mind racing. What were they going to find in this system? What secrets were the Ascendants hiding? The silence in the room felt unbearable as they waited for Soo-Jin to break through the final layers of security. Every second seemed to stretch on forever. Jin-Soo glanced around, his eyes scanning the walls for anything that could explain the ominous feeling he had in his gut. But there was nothing. Just cold, sterile metal. Finally, Soo-Jin's voice broke the silence. "Got it. I'm in." The terminal screen flickered to life, revealing a series of encrypted files and maps. Soo-Jin's eyes widened as she scrolled through the data. This is more than I expected. It's not just a facility. It's the hub of an entire network. Jin-Soo leaned in, trying to make sense of the files. A network? What kind of network? Soo-Jin's fingers hovered over the keyboard as she searched through the data. It looks like they've been setting up a series of bases all over Earth, hidden research labs, military outposts, even civilian organizations. It's a massive operation, all under the radar. And the Ascendants are at the top of it. Jin-Soo's heart sank. This was worse than he imagined. The Ascendants had their hands in nearly every part of Earth's infrastructure. No one was safe. As Soo-Jin continued to sift through the files, Jin-Soo noticed something strange. There was a pattern to the data, a series of locations marked with strange symbols. He couldn't make sense of it, but something about them felt important. "Soo-Jin," he said, pointing to the screen. "What are these symbols? They keep appearing next to certain locations." Soo-Jin frowned and zoomed in on the symbols. "These aren't standard military or scientific markers. It's like some kind of code. Let me see if I can decrypt it." She worked quickly, her eyes narrowing with concentration. After a few moments, the code on the screen shifted, revealing a series of coordinates. Jin-Soo's breath caught in his throat as he recognized one of the locations. "It's near Seoul," he said quietly. "It's back home." Minho's voice was low but urgent. "Are you saying the Ascendants have something there? Right under our noses?" Jin-Soo nodded. "We need to get back to Earth. Now." Before anyone could respond, a loud alarm rang through the station, cutting through the tense silence. Red lights flashed across the walls, and a mechanical voice echoed through the speakers. "Security breach detected. Lockdown initiated." Hae-Jin swore under her breath. "We've been compromised. They know we're here." Minho's expression hardened. "Time's up. We need to move." Soo-Jin quickly disconnected her laptop and stuffed it into her bag. "I got the data, but we need to get out before they seal us in." Jin-Soo's mind raced as the urgency of the situation sank in. They had what they came for. They had uncovered the network of the Ascendants and the locations they were targeting. But now, they were trapped. "We need to find another way out," Minho said, moving toward the door. "Follow me. Stay close." The team quickly made their way out of the terminal room and back into the hallway. The alarms were deafening now, and the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. The Ascendant's security forces were closing in. Jin-Soo's heart was pounding in his chest as they moved swiftly through the corridors. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted, that the Ascendants were already planning their next move. They had only just begun to fight back, But Jin Soo knew one thing for certain. They were in this together, and they couldn't stop now. The air felt thick with tension as Jin Soo and his team moved through the dimly lit halls of the satellite station, their every step echoing in the silence. The alarm continued to blare in the background, a constant reminder that they were running out of time. They had uncovered the Ascendant's hidden network, but now they had to escape before they were caught. The facility was on lockdown, and their window of opportunity was closing fast. Minho led the way, his face set with determination. "This way," he said, motioning for the others to follow. "We need to get to the exit before they seal us in." Jin Soo moved quickly, his mind still racing with the information they had uncovered. The Ascendants had been hiding in plain sight for years, manipulating governments, corporations, and even civilians. The network they had built was vast, and the locations they had uncovered were just the tip of the iceberg. But now, with their cover blown, Jin Soo knew they couldn't afford to waste any more time. They turned a corner and found themselves at a dead end. The hallway was blocked by a heavy metal door that had already begun to seal shut. "No time to waste," Minho said, pulling out a small device from his bag. "Hae-jin, get ready." Hae-jin nodded and stepped forward, her fingers moving swiftly over her weapon as she prepared to breach the door. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, and every second felt like an eternity. Soo-jin was still clutching her laptop, her eyes flicking nervously toward the ceiling. "We don't have much time. If we don't make it out soon, we'll be trapped in here for good." Jin Soo's heart was racing. He couldn't let that happen. They had come so far, and there was no turning back now. They had to escape, and they had to do it quickly. With a swift motion, Hae-jin planted explosives on the door, and within seconds, there was a deafening blast. The metal door flew open, sending a shower of sparks and debris flying through the air. The team rushed through the opening, their path now clear. "We're not out of the woods yet," Minho said, his voice low. "We still need to get to the extraction point." They ran through the hallway, their footsteps pounding against the cold concrete floor. The station's security forces were closing in, but they couldn't afford to stop. They had a mission to complete, and they couldn't let anything stand in their way. As they reached another set of doors, Minho paused, holding up a hand. "Wait." The group froze. They could hear the sound of approaching footsteps. The Ascendant soldiers were closing in. There was no time to waste. "We have to split up," Minho said, his voice urgent. "I'll leave a distraction. You guys take the left exit. It's our only shot." Jin Soo hesitated for a moment, looking around at his team. He trusted Minho, but splitting up was risky. Still, there was no other choice. They had to get out. "Understood," Jin Soo said. "We'll meet at the rendezvous point." Minho gave a sharp nod and quickly ran down the opposite hallway, disappearing into the shadows. Jin Soo motioned for the others to follow, and they sprinted toward the left exit. The sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, but they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to. They'd reached the exit and found themselves outside, the icy cold air hitting them like a slap to the face. The wind was fierce, biting through their clothing, but there was no time to think about the cold. They had to keep moving. "We're almost there," Hae-jin said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the ground beneath their feet. The station's outer perimeter had been breached, and the Ascendants were making their move. The team picked up the pace, running faster as the chaos unfolded behind them. The extraction point was just ahead, a small, hidden shuttle waiting to take them back to safety. But as they neared the shuttle, a familiar voice rang out from behind them. "Stop. Don't move." Jin Soo turned, his heart sinking as he saw a group of Ascendant soldiers emerging from the shadows, their weapons trained on them. The soldiers were fast, closing in quickly, and they weren't alone. Aria, the alien woman who had been their ally, was standing at the front of the group, her eyes cold and calculating. "Why?" Jin Su demanded, his voice filled with disbelief. You've been helping us. Aria's expression was unreadable, and for a moment there was silence. Then she spoke, her voice steady but full of authority. The Ascendants are not the enemy, Jin Su. You never understood. I was sent here to protect Earth, to ensure its survival. Jin Su's mind raced. What are you talking about? You were the one who warned us. Aria took a step forward. The Ascendants are trying to prevent an even greater threat. I was sent to keep you from interfering with their plan. The network they've built is the key to saving this world. Jin Su felt his stomach drop. Everything he had believed about the Ascendants had just been turned upside down. Were they truly trying to save Earth, or was this all part of a bigger, more dangerous plan? Before he could react, a sharp noise cut through the air, a sudden burst of gunfire. Jin had reacted instinctively, firing on the soldiers who were closing in on them. The chaos erupted, and Jin Su knew they didn't have much time. We have to go, Minho shouted, appearing from behind, his face grim. He had drawn the Ascendants away long enough to give them an opening. Without hesitation, Jin Su and the others ran for the shuttle. The Ascendants were moments away from catching up, but they had one shot at escaping. The shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting off just as the soldiers fired their weapons. But they had made it. They were safe for now. As the shuttle soared into the sky, Jin Su looked back at the planet below. The truth had been revealed, but so many questions remained. What was the real plan of the Ascendants? Were they truly saving Earth, or were they part of an even greater threat? For now, all Jin Su could do was hold on to the hope that they would find the answers before it was too late.